Now, there is a worrying growing trend nowadays of children who claim to have unhealthy relationships with their parents. I mean, the term that they actually use is toxic. My parent is toxic. But the question is there such a thing as toxic parenting? If it is there, maybe is it a result of some kind of parenting styles that people have decided to adopt? I don't know. And today on Inside Out, this is the issue that we want to interrogate. Toxic parenting. Is it a real thing? Are parents toxic, especially in the African setting? Ungatoti kuna mai vako here muri toxic. Those are some of the issues that we want to look at. And of course, I am Yvonne Mukonda, and joining us, I have a gentleman and a lady who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, sir.
Great. Noah Mangwara is my name. Yeah, you just call me a motivational speaker and a leadership coach. Okay. I think that will suffice for the day.
Great to have you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Vembai Chironga. I'm a child rights advocate and also a transformational coach.
All right. Thank you for having joined us. And the topic that we have today is one that is quite interesting, controversial, whichever way you want to take it. Toxic parenting. Is there such a thing as toxic parenting? If there is, what is it? Noah?
Oh yeah, sure. There is. Obviously, because as we relate, you realize that there are people who have certain personalities by virtue of maybe being born in a particular maybe family line, or it's something that they would have adopted along the way, probably because of circumstances, and they then become toxic, as in they become poisonous in terms of how they deal with others, notably their children, to a point where they create an environment of fear, and they create an environment where the other party, notably the children, they are no longer comfortable in that environment. Where someone would probably fear going home maybe after school, or they're just afraid of their parents, whether the mother or the father.
All right. Toxic parenting, Vimba, is it a thing?
Yes, I believe it's a thing, because we are looking at parents who've got, like you said, parenting styles that can be harmful to children. We're looking at the way they discipline their children. We're looking at the way they relate with their children. Some can be very harsh. Some can be very, they can also be manipulative. Some can just be not so friendly, no empathy, and not having that listening ear to their child. So a lot of these then affect the child emotionally, the mental well-being, and even to the extent of on the physical side. Yeah, so I believe somehow it's there. Yeah.
All right, but I just really want to find out, in an African setting, Zimbabwe, and some of the things that we believe in, maybe in the Shona culture, amai vatukwe, amai vanongedzwe, amai vakwanise kuvapuma, kuti inini ndotomira kuti kuna mai vanga ndofunga muri toxic and you're not good for me. Is it something in the African culture?
It's not necessarily a matter of then telling them that you are toxic, but it's a matter of maybe you realizing that no, there's something amiss here, and not necessarily like confronting the mother and saying,
but
no,
how do I deal with it if I don't tell you that you're toxic?
Right. I think what is actually happening is there is now an increased awareness, obviously because the world has now become a global room, as it were, to a point where we now know certain things that were not there probably when some of us were growing up, right? We would just probably at times be abused, but you have no way maybe to make reference to. But right now, someone may then want to check this type of behavior. Is it really something that is good? And by finding out, then you realize that, no, it's actually toxic parenting by my parent, as it were. But to then go forth and then tell your mother that you are doing things wrong, it might not be made upon you to then do that. At times I feel you might want to engage maybe a third party to really say, no, the way things are here is no longer healthy for me, it's now affecting me as a person.
Yeah. The African setting, Vimbai, yes. How do I deal with it? Is it a thing really in the African society to actually have toxic parents in as much as they may be there? And how do we deal with it? He says, you cannot confront your parent. You cannot tell your mother that you're toxic. But if I cannot tell her, if I cannot tell my dad that, look, this is toxic behavior and I'll not stand for this, how then do I deal with it?
When such a situation is within the family setup, of which there are quite a number, you're looking at the nuclear, you're looking at the community itself, the extended family, all these, they can come into play to assist where one cannot approach a parent to say, Mama, I think you're very toxic. Though I know the children of today, they can just go straight up and say, I think that's very toxic, and I can't tolerate it. You know, and they even throw tantrums, you know, that kind of thing. But then going back into an African setting, probably a little back, you know, it was difficult to confront a parent, but you'd probably go through Sekuru or Tete and say, inini, and I don't think tukugarisana zvakanaka na mama, maybe pane pandiri kukanganisa, madima nyaya yangu yakamira so, madi kupindira sekuru, mambonzwa kuti mai say, probably even they even say kuti mai vakandivenga, you know, mai havasi kugona kutaura nini zvakanaka, pane zvandakavakanganisira ndikumbire regerero. But even as it were like that, I just feel there has to be a platform to address situations. Either it's in our African setting, either our global perspective with our new kind of children that we have and our parenting skills. But then as well, there has to be a way that parents also are taught parenting styles. And it's all around communication. And somehow, probably on the cultural side, you can have issues to do with how the parents grew up.
And somebody's actually asking, you're talking of parenting styles, and it seems to be an issue or something new to that person. He says, what are these parenting styles that you're referring to?
Parenting styles, generally, we're just looking at how you parent your child in terms of how you communicate, how you address issues in the house, communicating with your children in a way that respects their autonomy, in a way that is empathetic, and also leaving a room for your child to be able to come to you and say, Mom, I've got this issue, and you've got a listening ear. Because others, they probably, if you tell them your problem, like back in the days, mama ndine problem yakadai waigona kutoiroverwa, you know, kuti even to share just a general issue, to say, Mom, kuchikoro zvazodai zvikadai manga muri mese wakutorowa. Yes, and I believe we had parents like that.
Yeah, of course,
and you mentioned something that I found really interesting, you know, to say that somebody may think, oh, my mother hates me or my dad hates me. Is it possible for a parent to hate their own child?
I think it's more to do with maybe the approach that the parents then taking, or where there's this concept of tough love. I have to be maybe overly strict on my children, and when I do that, it's a sign of love. You know, it's more like, you know, someone saying, no, this is how we grew up, right? And I'm what I am because of how I was then brought up. And we might want to apply the same thing to our children, but in the process, because of the awareness that our children now have, they get to a point where they then say, no, but Mdara hates me. For me, it's not just about, am I? It's also about even the fathers, where at times a father can be overly strict, and the way they then discipline the children is no longer discipline. It's now abuse. It becomes physical abuse. And when it becomes physical abuse, because I'm now aware of what is happening around me, because we always interact, or children always interact with others, then they're told, no, I'm the and in the process, you know, this is where then at times children end up confronting even their parents. And they even say, no, Magandivenga.
Or maybe are you my real mother?
Exactly.
I adopted?
Yeah, true. Something like that. Right? But on the part of the parent, they are saying, no, it's tough love. I'm showing you the love. So that, you know, when you go wherever you go, you'll be a real man. You know, you're a real woman. But in the process, you know what, someone may actually be bruised, emotionally, to really say, but why is this person doing this to me? Are they really my biological mother or father? Yeah.
Right. Vimbai, we're looking at whether or not it's possible, like you said, for a parent to hate their own child. To see, because we read a lot of stories on social media where people come forth and they're complaining. They're saying, you know what, look, we're 3 in our family, and my mother seems to favor the middle child as compared to me. Or maybe because these ones have money, they seem to get more love and more attention. I'm just like, I do not exist.
Maybe hate. It's relative, and also it's to do with how the other person really feels. So when they feel that amai vakandivenga, something would have happened, because that feeling can just not come. Just like you feel that vanondida. Yeah. So it's the way they treat that person. And sometimes it could be Reshua kuti, they're probably comparing, they're not giving them enough attention. So also people are very sensitive.
Oh, yeah,
so in their sensitivity, the moment they feel that I'm not loved, to them, it goes to the extreme. They hate me. So also when we are having our children in the family, it's just the same with our fingers on our palms. They are not of the same, length, right?
True.
So they're different. And so we've got children in the same family. They can be 5, they can be 4, and they are different. And all of them, they need to have different ways in which a parent can communicate with them. They're sensitive in their own way. They need their autonomy. And also we're looking at age and also development. Yes. So if a parent can understand those things and say, okay, this one anima issues akaita so, sakandomu treata so, undomu treata so, because everyone individuality comes in. So if a parent can be able to do that and not compare, that becomes toxic, because it self-esteem yemwana inotodzikira. Probably I'm going to transfer a hate kuti, I hate my brother. I hate my sister. Why? Because mom favors her or favors him. And so parents should not be in a position to compare. I remember even growing up in my neighborhood, there used to be a family that would say, same singaita sewa nopa number 8. Makambona machibuda panze. And those kids would really not like us. But for us, isusu taito dogu buda panze. But tainzo ambude panze munobuda panze kunete muri 3 munomtamba imese makadaru. That kind of thing. But all those comparisons, it brings that toxicity, And when the child feels that I'm not loved, why am I compared to the other person? I am my own person. So parents should actually accept that there is that individuality and accept a child as they are. And try to nurture them in a way that they need to be nurtured, and not without comparison. Yes.
And let's look at cases where parents probably divorce, right? I'm married to my husband, we divorce, I have a child, and this child looks like the father. She or he is a split image of the father. And maybe we've separated on not so good terms. And every time I look at this little person, she's reminding me of the dead, And some parents end up hating that child because you are a reflection of your father. This man who probably treated me in a bad way, and I end up treating my child in a bad way. How do we deal with such issues? Are people going through maybe counseling after they separate to know that, do not transfer your hate to your child?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, obviously, because I've not been there. But but I think, like you've indicated, I think it's more to do with maybe then engaging third parties, maybe a counsel of some sort, really, because you then don't want to transfer, that hatred to your child, because you also want to develop this child to become, the individual that they are supposed to be, and not to be making reference to maybe someone that you have issues with. It might not only be to do with maybe a spouse or someone that you have divorced with, right? But at times it's more to do with also even the relations, right? Where someone then just feels because of the hatred that they have, maybe for amwene or whatever, right? And it then pushed to the children, and to a point where the child can actually feel it, that no, there's something amiss here.
Yeah.
But I feel, with the so much information that is around us, everyone should probably rise up and become maybe a little bit more mature in terms of how we then deal with, especially these ones who are coming up, and not get to a point where we are busy transferring maybe our hatred for other people to the children. Yeah.
Wakafana babako, wakatoza babako, this and that. You constantly reminding that child of how much of a failure the mother or the father is. How do we deal with that, and how do you view that?
It's only good when it's a positive comparison to say,
True.
akafana baba wake, because they're talking about intelligence. Akafana na mai wake, because they're talking about smartness or how to cook or anything positive. But when it comes to something bad, also as a parent, you're not in a good space to create a relationship between the child and the parent, because regardless, that child needs to know their other parent. And for them to know that other side of the parent in a bad way, I don't think it's healthy for both parties. So also, how it then becomes toxic is to say, at the end of the day, we're looking at that self-fulfilling prophecy. Babakwe maybe he's been in prison or something like that. That child will probably end up being one, you know. But there comes that resentment to say, why are you comparing me to my dad? Why are you comparing me to my mother when it's on the negative side? I am my own individual person and I'm different and I see things differently. So as the other spouse, either divorced or together in the family, there is need to find a way to communicate or address issues rather than having to being that kind of person who's always poking, because to me that's really poking. Yeah.
And let's look at instances where one is raised maybe on the maternal side of the family or the paternal side of the family, and then finally this person is grown and the person wants to get married, especially for women or who are raised, you know, by their mothers. Now this person wants to get married and wants the father's side of the family to get involved, and the mother is like, nope, these people were not involved when I was raising you. How then do you just want that person to come into your life and claim you as their child and get you married off? It can even go as far as who's walking you down the aisle. I want my dad to walk me down the aisle because it's my dad, but my mother is saying, no, you do not know this man. How do we deal with such issues, especially seeing the divide, or you know what African tradition says about it and what I would want as an individual?
I think the key issue is not to be self-centered and to be individualistic and to advance your own personal interests. It's more for the greater good of the greatest many, in the sense that if I then do that to my child, right, what picture am I painting, right, even to the relations, as it were? In as much as fine, one might have done everything to raise the child up, and at times if you look at it closely, it might also be the problem with the person who is then claiming that I've done it by myself. You know, we actually have a lot of toxicity that comes from you know, a parent, notably women, who then say,
Really?
I will not. I don't want you. I don't want you to meet your father, right? And the child will insist, please, I just want to know my father. Right? And they tell you, no, it's not
but
for you.
But is it toxicity? Or maybe I'm protecting you from this man because I know he is disappearing X days here. Tomorrow is not. So I'm like, I think it's better for you not to have any kind of relationship with this man.
At times it's not even about that. It's more to do with, you know, the self-interest, the ego thing, where then saying, no, I can look after my child on my own. But what it is doing to the child is it is actually affecting the child negatively, right? Because in their mind they're busy thinking, but where's my father? Right? And probably they then get to know their father when they are 22 or they are 23. Right? And this is when maybe the marriage, I mean, when the marriage is taking place, right? When the father is denied even access to maybe the wedding venue, something like that. I always feel differences between two people should not then be cascaded to third party, notably children, as it were. I think it will also affect the child even in their own marriage. You then realize that most of these people, they have challenges. Why? Because they then feel that, but I can even do things on my own without you and things like that. So we have created a worse of problem into the other generation, which I feel is not good enough.
All right, But is that toxicity, or is it a parent trying to protect their child, or is it a parent trying to protect their feelings?
It can be both ways. You'd see probably there is so much hate, there is so much resentment, and they'll end up saying, I don't want that man to be close to my child. But when we're looking at as the child, as they're growing up, they need to know who their other parent is, because they have got their right, because every child has got the right to identity. Yes. So only when we're looking at issues where the other parent is violent or has got some issues they need to handle because they can be harmful to the child and also even harmful to themselves, then probably there is things like a restraining order or a custodian issue going on, and there has to be a monitored visitation. Then probably you would say they can't meet, you know, with the child because they're protecting really their interest, because you need to protect them from harm. But as they're growing
those are
up,
extreme cases.
yeah, those are extreme
yeah,
cases,
mm.
and which are there as well.
Yeah, of course.
But then as they grow older, you know, they need also to be given that autonomy to say, it's up to you.
Oh, yeah.
This is the kind of person your parent, your father or your mother is. And it's up to you if you want to meet them. And, you know, really children, they'll say, yes, I just want to know who they are. And they've got their right, and they should be given that platform. Yeah.
And I know we touched on communication earlier on, whether or not
Right.
it's proper to confront your parent, right? But I heard of an issue last week of somebody I know, right?
Okay.
This person was more or less, would say, abandoned by the parent, because that's the story that we know.
Okay.
The dad died, and then the mother had to go back to her people, and then this child was around 3, 4. Now the child is grown.
Okay.
The mother went off, got married. She now has other children, and now she's giving this child, whom she abandoned, issues, saying, you know what, you're not taking care of your siblings, you're not sending money for food, you're not taking them to school. And this one is saying, no, but it's not my responsibility. You were not there when I was growing up, and now you pop up, you want me to be taking care of these children. How do you deal with such issues? And Kuchishona, they will tell you, Dimai.
You know what? If I'm then a grown up, I also have a right to decide for myself. And in that case, you see, there's no harm, you know, in talking to the mother, right? If I have something to give you, fine, I will. But given, you know, the circumstances that maybe brought me to where I am, I also have a right even not to give anything. Right? I know that might sound extreme, but you see, one would then want to look at what then transpired from the past, right? But from a purely, you know, human, you know, standpoint, you know, at times you then say, no, yeah, I mean, be human enough, be African enough, you know, just forgive your mother and let's move on.
But then in this case, who initiates the conversation? You left me. I don't know why you left me, right? And usually with our African parents, when they come back into your life, they don't want to talk about it. Let's just start up from now and move. But I feel like I want to talk about it. Who initiates the conversation? Is it you as the parent, or is it me as the child?
Well, it depends how people can actually bring forth, you know, to say, let's talk about it. Some, they're not free to to first open up, but then they're in a position to answer your questions. So whoever who's able to start a conversation, then, yeah, they set the motion. So if I am the child who's been wronged, if I want answers, I can just go straight up and say, why did you abandon me? Why did you leave me? But in the aspect that you mentioned to say, I have to take care of, yes, I can take care of you, probably on a biblical standpoint, honor your mother and honor your parents, yeah? I can do that, but it's not my obligation to take care of these other siblings. Yeah, it's not.
It's not your obligation.
It's not. I can when I have, and if I feel, yes, I can. Yeah, but not. It mustn't be a force matter to say, I need school fees for your sibling. I don't know them.
You know, the other side of it is that, you know, when you then maybe approach the mother, you know, you know, and I cannot have my child,
Exactly.
you know, coming to me and asking me, which then explains why at times, from the African tradition, you know, standpoint, you know, they are always, you know, you might want, as a child, you might then want to approach them. But if it's the mother who is initiating the conversation, it's okay. But if it's coming from me as a child, you know, it's a very tricky one, right? So it's also a matter of then assessing maybe the situation, right? But probably in your case, I think maybe it's now the mother who then initiated, obviously, because they've realized that I know my child is now maybe a bit well up, and they're then coming back, right? But in that case, I feel there's no harm really in just forgiving. Fine, She remains my mother anyway.
Yeah.
She remains your mother. We also want to look at, you know, issues to do with mental health. A lot of people are battling depression, and there are a whole lot of issues, unspoken issues.
True,
You're
true.
a child, you're staying in your parents' house. You wake up one day and you feel, I'm not doing okay mentally. I just want to sleep it in. You know, I don't want to talk about it. Or if you decide to talk about it, maybe you talk to your pastor or whoever it is that you feel open to. Your parent is called in, told, Yvonne is not doing well. When she comes back home, it's an issue. Ndini kabe depression. You know, how do we deal with those issues, and how do we make parents aware of the realities of mental health issues?
I think there's need for awareness, as much as right now there's a lot of awareness about drug abuse. You know, a long time ago there was also a lot of awareness on HIV and AIDS, which I don't really hear so much noise about it anyway, but it's still within us.
It is.
It's still amongst us. So we should not like forget about these other issues. And so there are a number of organizations and there are a number of platforms that can be addressed these issues. People, they can just push them under the carpet and just feel that they're a bit trivial, but they're not, because at the end of the day, they nurture a certain behaviors in children that then take them through to adulthood. And then they also become toxic parents to their children. It becomes a cycle. So it comes with the cultural values and how to raise children. Vakakura vachinzi munhu ngaarohwe, you know, and it cascades down to that child, to the grandchildren. Kuti munhu kuti zvipinde musoro munhu ngaarohwe, you know, that kind of thing. So some have got those traumas from way back. They need therapy, like say they need counseling, and all those things should come into play. So I just feel there are organizations that are out there, and there are counselors, there are family lawyers, there are even priests, even bafundisi who can come into play. Let these have a platform for awareness. Yeah, to say let's have my workshops on parenting, tiriku church ikoko, or whatever platform. Let's have my trainings. Let's learn how to communicate and build a better nation. So yeah.
And what you spoke about really got me thinking. We have all of these things going on. You know, when a woman is getting married, there's a bridal party where you're taught on how to handle your marriage, and more times than not, you're just told how to handle your marriages and what to do for your husband and stuff like that. And vakadzi vanoenda kuchina, I don't know what men do, but do we actually have platforms where people sit down and talk about parenting and how to raise their children?
Maybe interestingly, I'm one of the few men in the country who speaks Kuma Kitchen Party.
Oh, really?
Yes, I do, right? But you know, one thing that I always say is this. You invite me to talk for 45 minutes for 1 hour, right? To someone who is 25 years old. And you expect me in 1 hour to then transform this person to become a very good person, right? But what have you done over the past 25 years to build this person up? So in other words, I'm saying that there is need, right? Besides just waiting for an event which is once off, to then develop a person in a long time process, right? Through the education system, through the spiritual, setups, through, you know, a whole lot of other platforms, right? Where, you know, there's continuous bombarding of a person with information that is going to add value to them, than to just wait for this particular event when maybe it's a kitchen party, or, you know, it's now a wedding. Then you were expecting the preacher to then preach and, you know, drill, you know, information to the person and transform that person, you know, within 1 hour. It won't happen, right?
It won't happen.
So the bottom line is, I really feel, you know, if someone is, you know, is spiritual, you know, Zimbabwe is a spiritual country. Many people, I don't know how many are Christians, but we are very spiritual, right? But we are saying, you know, from those spiritual setups, there is need to then create platforms where the parents are taught on these things. The children are also taught on these things, right? And not just, you know, have a situation where, you know, week in, week out, we are being preached unto, you know, you know, at times the preaching would then not make much sense.
Sure.
Why? Because there is no total development of the whole person, right? So I really feel even through, you know, the education system, you know, these children, right from primary level, they must be taught these things.
They must be taught.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that we've run out of time, but I will ask you maybe in 15 seconds your parting shot.
Okay. I would say that toxic parenting is there and it's real and it's affecting the behavior of our children getting right through to adulthood, and there is need for introspection for the parents to really see their underlying behaviors that get into the toxic dynamics so that they're able to have a healthy relationship with their children whom they are also grooming to be better people in this world.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're a parent, you have a role to play in your child's life, and always choose the best way to raise your children, because it has a bearing even on future generations.
All right. Always choose the best way to raise your children because it has a bearing even on future generations. We were talking toxic parenting here on Inside Out today, finding out whether or not it is a real concept, and if it is, how do we deal with it, how do we navigate it, and how do we raise children in a way that is healthy such that they do not become toxic parents themselves. Until we meet again, hopefully next week, pleasant viewing.